Acts chapter 25. Paul had been in prison for 2 years, waiting for justice. He had faced false accusations, angry mobs, corrupt officials, and even a plot to kill him. He had defended himself before governors and rulers, but no one seemed willing to set him free or to condemn him. He was stuck in limbo of legal loopholes and political pressures. Can you imagine being stuck in prison for 2 years? You didn't know which way things were headed. You were just there, stuck. But God didn't forget Paul. Of course he didn't, because God had a plan for Paul, a special one, an important one. You see, God wanted Paul to share the gospel of Jesus Christ to the highest authority in the land, Caesar himself. Remember, Paul was in Caesarea, in a prison. Felix, the governor, had put him there. A new governor named Festus arrived in Caesarea, so Paul thought that this might be an opportunity to move things along. Like Felix, the new governor Festus was also eager to please the Jewish leaders. Why did the governor of Caesarea want to please the Jewish leaders? Well, there are several reasons. The Jewish leaders had a lot of influence and authority among the Jewish people, and there were a lot of them who were passionate about their religion, traditions, and customs. The Jewish leaders could cause riots and revolts against the ruling Romans, and that would be a terrible thing to happen, because the governor was there primarily to maintain order and stability in the region. Another reason is because Felix and Festus were greedy, corrupt, and power hungry. They used their political power and position to make themselves rich and to keep going up the political ladder. The Jewish leaders had a lot of money and other valuable things. They used their wealth to bribe the governors to make decisions and do things they wanted. And remember that almost all of the Jewish leaders hated Paul. Festus offered to send Paul back to Jerusalem for trial, knowing that they would ambush him and kill him on the way. But Paul knew his rights as a Roman citizen and appealed to Caesar. Festus had no choice but to grant his request. What does it mean for a Roman citizen to appeal to Caesar? The right to directly appeal to Caesar was a privilege of Roman citizenship that allowed a person to transfer their case from a local authority to the imperial court in Rome. This right was established by a law called Lex de Publica. I hope I got that right. Which protected Roman citizens from abuse by local authorities. The appeal to Caesar was usually irrevocable, meaning that once made, it could not be withdrawn or changed. The appeal had to be made before the local verdict was pronounced, and it had to be based on a valid reason, such as injustice, corruption, or danger. The appeal also had to be accepted by the local authority, Festus, the governor, for example, who could not refuse it without a good reason. The appeal to Caesar was risky and cost a lot. The journey to Rome was long and dangerous and could take months or years. It involved expenses for travel, lodging, and food. But before Paul could sail to Rome, another king came to visit Festus, King Agrippa. He was a descendant of Herod the Great, the king who had tried to kill Jesus as a baby. He was also a friend of Festus and an expert on Jewish affairs. Festus told him about Paul's case and asked for his advice. Agrippa was curious and wanted to hear Paul for himself. Paul was brought before Agrippa and Bernice, his sister. They were dressed in royal robes and surrounded by pomp and splendor. Paul was dressed in chains and surrounded by soldiers and guards. Anyone could have been easily intimidated by their appearance and authority, but Paul was not. Paul was focused on the mission that God had given him, which was to share the gospel of Jesus. He began by addressing Agrippa with respect and courtesy, acknowledging his knowledge of Jewish customs and beliefs. Paul explained how he had been a zealous Pharisee who persecuted Christians until he met Jesus on the road to Damascus. He described how Jesus had changed his life and called him to be an apostle to the Gentiles. He told them how he had obeyed God's vision and preached the gospel of Jesus everywhere he went. He challenged Agrippa to believe the prophets who foretold the coming of the Messiah. As Paul spoke with passion and conviction, Festus interrupted him and accused him of being insane. He said that Paul's great learning had driven him mad. But Paul calmly replied that he was not mad, but speaking the truth. He turned to Agrippa and asked him if he believed the prophets. Agrippa was cornered by Paul's question. He knew that if he said yes, he would have to admit that Jesus was the Messiah. He knew that if he said no, he would offend the Jews who respected him. So he tried to evade the answer by saying sarcastically, "Do you think that in such a short time you can persuade me to be a Christian?" Paul did not miss a beat. He said earnestly, "Short time or long, I pray to God that not only you, but all who are listening to me today may become what I am, except for these chains." Bold, full of grace. Paul did not care about his own fate or freedom. He cared about the souls of those who heard him. He cared about Agrippa's salvation more than his own safety, about God's glory more than anything. The hearing ended without a verdict. Agrippa and Festus agreed that Paul had done nothing deserving death or imprisonment. They agreed that he could have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar. But they also agreed that he had to go to Rome as he requested. And so Paul boarded a ship bound for Rome. He did not know what was waiting for him there, but he knew who would always be with him every step of the way. He knew who had called him there. He knew who had sent him there. He knew that nothing could stop him from fulfilling his mission, which was to preach the gospel of Jesus to the ends of the earth.